Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. And good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening to this show. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, British by birth, American by choice, just like the Founding Fathers, your constitutional conservative with a different voice. And as many of you will be listening to the recording, and so it'll be a few more days closer to the end of the month, let me first of all wish everybody a happy and safe Halloween, especially for your children or grandchildren, but have fun. And we'll, next week we'll be into a new month, and it's going to be a very important month, of course, because we are now exactly 1 week away from the midterm elections. And, of course, next week, we'll be looking at the results on the show. I will have one or two other topics, including one of blatant voter fraud, actually a couple of them, who says that no cases of voter fraud. Now we have one on video, blatant. I don't know what's going to happen about it. Not going to discuss it today, though. I think we'll have that as part of the show next week as we look at the results and maybe know why some of the results are not quite the ones that we think they should be. But before we leave the elections, and basically to counter my, let's say, slightly negative comments about the GOP last week, not really deserving to be successful, I do have to say, in actual fact, let me beg you, please vote, either in early voting or obviously on next Tuesday. And please, please, please vote GOP in your Senate race. If you want to make a statement, please do so in other races. I think we can hold the House, and if you want to do it in any other races, please do so. But as far as the Senate is concerned, if you have to hold your nose, whatever you have to do, please vote GOP. We must give Dingy Harry a pink slip next Tuesday. We must give Dingy Harry a pink slip next Tuesday. Let me remind you of that. And remember as well, no vote is a vote for King Barry and Dingy Harry. So go out there, please vote GOP in your Senate race. Now, regular listeners will know that normally I don't tell you what I would like you to vote. I tell you to do your research and make your own choice. But I think if you do the research and see with Dingy Harry sitting on over 380 bills that he's just basically ignoring, we have to get rid of him. So please vote for your GOP senator. Like I said, even if you don't like the guy, please do so. It's the only way we can get rid of Harry Reid and everything, all the bad things that he's doing. And one of the good reasons to get rid of the regressives is what's going on, some of the really strange things that are going on outside Washington. So before we get to my weekly commentary, let me add this very interesting topic that I came across that, again, sent chills running down my spine. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is part of the United Nations, and You know how the United Nations loves to throw its weight around. The United Nations has found a deadly threat to put in its sights and to take action on. Can you guess what that is? Yes, you might think it's Ebola, which is indiscriminately ravaging Africa. You might think it's AIDS, which is also victimizing Africa and millions of other innocents worldwide. Or international terrorism that's taking the lives of children. No. The UN has decided they want to fight tobacco. These bureaucrats, because that's all they are, nobody elected them, want to rid the world of tobacco. It's a threat so insidious that it only hurts those foolish enough to use it repeatedly, knowing the harm it causes. In other words, if you're stupid enough to do it, that's your fault. We don't need the nanny state or the nanny UN telling us what to do. This is doubly dangerous. Two major reasons. First of all, the UN is continuing its attempts to basically become a world government and exert its authority on member states. And that's going to render national democracy meaningless. If these unelected Democrats in New York, and that's something that's wrong as well, but if they're going to take decisions for us, how do we stop them? Because we don't elect them. We don't have anything to do with the people there. And so if an organization like the UN can tell you what you can and cannot buy in your own nation, how are you going to be able to control it? Ballot box won't do it. The second dangerous thing about it is that it shows again how the regressives seek power, steal power, by saying that it's something that will do good for everyone else, because reckon that the folks at the UN smoke like chimneys. Think about it. What do we hear? Just a little more power and we can clean up the streets. And normally with that power goes money. Just a little more power and we can improve the environment. Just a little more power and money and we can fix education. But that little bit of power is often the thin end of the wedge, the foot in the door. And with it, the enemies of freedom will maneuver to gain ever more power, always in the name of doing good, but never delivering on their original promise. Look at the promises that the Democrats have made to the black community for the last 50 years. The gulf between promise and result is enormous, but those votes still go to increasing the Democrats' power at the expense of the black people. So remember, folks, never trust someone who wants power to help you. Trust those who fight for your liberty to live life as you see fit. And I've noticed, hopefully, that people will hear and understand it, that there are people in the black community now saying, ignore the Democrats. Don't just vote for Obama. Don't just vote for the Democrats because they say that they're better for blacks, because they ain't done nothing for us. And those people are right. Anyway, we'll go on in a moment to the next topic. As I do at this time, just like to say hi to the folks in the chat room. I see Paul has arrived. Rex isn't there yet. Always great fun in the chat room. If you are listening live, and unfortunately one of the disadvantages of this Spreaker site is that I can't see who is listening live, don't forget you can participate in the chat room. It's the little speech bubble with some dots in it on your screen. Click on that and it'll open up the chat room, and I watch the chat room, try and react to comments in there, and you can of course talk to other listeners that are listening live. If you are not listening live, listening to either the recordings that I put out at archives.patriotcomelately.us, or you're listening via that great network on the internet, Red State Talk Radio, at redstatetalkradio.com, of course. If If you're listening there, then you can't react directly to the show, but you can send me an email. Stefan@patriotcomelately.us is the email address. Or you can go to my website, www.patriotcomelately.us. There's a button there for a contact form. Fill in your comments, questions, anything you like. Send it to me. Same with the email. I love to hear from my listeners. Often we'll bring your comments into a future show, but I also promise to get back to you directly even before the show takes place. And another thing I always like to say before we go on to the next topic, if you like the show, please tell your friends, family, acquaintances. If you don't like the show, then tell your enemies, but I think these messages need to go out, and especially with this 1 week to the elections, I'm going to give you some reasons why you should vote in a particular direction. I've given you one for the Senate, very specific with that. For the other ones, I'll give you the reasons and let you take your own decision. So, what I'd like to do is start on my weekly commentary. We may have to split it up for the commercial break. And of course, with it being 1 week, I am going to comment a little bit, rant a bit about this election, this midterm election coming up. Like 2 years ago, we said this is probably one of the most important elections in our lifetime. It didn't go the way we wanted, and look at the mess we're in. So it was an important one. Well, this one is our second chance. So it's important as well. It is hugely important. It is our opportunity to start setting things right. So it is a critical milestone again for this country next Tuesday. And we just have to hope and pray and do what we can. It's no good sitting at home and praying. It's no good sitting at home and dreaming. Get out there. Tell your friends to vote. If you feel strongly enough, tell them what to vote, but at the very least, tell them to vote. And hopefully, if the Conservatives, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents are strong enough and fired up enough to put their differences aside, we can set our country back on the road to prosperity and peace. So the big question is, will we be able to put a stop, or at least reduce, the entitlement mentality in this once great and hopefully soon to be great again country? Let's think positive and assume that the GOP does indeed win the majority in the Senate next week, and hopefully by more than just a seat or two. It'd be nice. I don't think we'll get the magical supermajority 66. That would be a super wave if that happened. But if we could get more than just the 6 we need, maybe, let's say 9 or 10 seats, that would be really good. Putting us 3 or 4 up, that would be really great to have. Now, if that happens, we'll probably be saddled with Mitch McConnell as the leader of the Senate. Not my first choice, obviously. But anything is better than Dingy Harry. Now, I'm not sure what the parliamentary rules are, but there are over 380 bills that are in the current leader's desk drawer. And I don't know if in the new session that will start in January, whether those can be taken out of that desk drawer and voted on, or do they have to go through the whole thing in the House, etc. So I don't know what those rules are. It'd be nice if they could do that. But even if they did, we know that probably at least 379 of those bills will be refused by the little dictator. But think about it, folks. That's likely to be a good thing, because it will show the American people who really is the party of no. And it could have a major impact on Hildebeest's chances in 2016, or whoever else might end up challenging and beating her in the Democrat primary. So that would be good if Obama is just refusing to sign these bills. And again, we probably wouldn't get the supermajority to force them through, but at least it's out in the open. The way Dingy Harry has basically put these bills in the desk drawer, it's as if nothing has happened. But if Obama is seen to be refusing them, that will get American people thinking differently. Okay, folks, it's time to take our first break, so stick with me. I'll be back right after these messages.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Attention! Have you been in a serious automobile accident? Then you need to call our attorneys now. We specialize in helping our clients get compensated for major auto injuries. If you've been in any type of car or motorcycle accident and you've been seriously injured, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation. Our attorneys have recovered millions and millions of dollars for injured clients. There are no out-of-pocket costs to you ever. We only receive a fee when we win your case. We are available 24/7. If you've been in an accident and been seriously injured, make this free call to our attorneys now. Call the Personal Injury Center at 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. 800-634-1315. That's 800-634-1315. This ad is paid for by participating member law firms. We are not an attorney referral service. Representation may not be available in your state.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.org. And thanks for sticking with me through that break. I just want to remind new listeners and also obviously old listeners, if you have need of any of the services in these commercials, please use the 800 numbers that are given during the commercial, because that actually helps support the show. These are per inquiry commercials. I don't get paid for running them, but I do get paid if people call up and inquire about the services. So if you need them, please use the 800 numbers. Much appreciated. I'm in the middle of my weekly commentary, kind of a new thing that I've brought into the show, and I hope my listeners like it, where I basically try and take some things in the news and give my view on it. And before the break, we were talking about the election, and then how if we were to get control of the Senate, keep the House, that means we could be presenting all sorts of bills to King Barry that he would probably refuse to sign, and that would not be good for whoever's hoping to take over from him on the Democrat side come 2016. Obviously, Hillary Clinton is right now, everybody seems to think, is the front runner. Now, of course, the Hildebeest hurt her own chances recently with an unimaginable foot-in-mouth statement. At a Democratic rally in Massachusetts, she was attempting to attack trickle-down economics, and this resulted in the most strange statement ever. So she was talking about defending raising the minimum wage, saying Don't let anyone tell you that raising the minimum wage will kill jobs. They always say that. Well, first of all, Madam Secretary of State, ex-Secretary of State, useless, incompetent Secretary of State, not only do they always say that, but economics says that, and experience teaches us that that happens. And let's just look at McDonald's now, putting a lot of money into developing robots and touchscreens to replace people in the fast food business because they're being threatened with the increase in the minimum wage. But what was even worse, she then went on to state that businesses and corporations are not the job creators of America. She literally said, "Don't let anyone tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs." Think about that. Don't let anybody tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs. Well, if she does end up winning the Democratic primary in 2016, that, I'm sure, is an audio that we are going to hear over and over again. How she could say anything that stupid, I have no idea at all. And I really think this is a major step to cancelling her ability to run for president in 2016, because I think maybe even her own challengers will use that against her in the Democratic Party. Democrats are kind of turning on each other. Look how they're turning on Obama right now. Okay, and as last part of my weekly commentary, let's see, do we have time? Yes, we have plenty of time for that. Kind of stayed away, haven't made that many comments about Ebola, although it's been going for a number of weeks, but I really have to say something because there's so many shenanigans going on, and especially the mess, the hypocrisy, and the unpatriotic statements from the regime about Ebola. They're despicable. I'm disgusted. So let me say, and there's so much that could be said, but here's just really a couple of things that I want to talk about. Firstly, you may remember that basically Dear Leader seemed to be ignoring the Ebola crisis for a number of weeks. Wasn't really doing anything. It was a thing. All sorts of things were happening, and he literally wasn't doing very much. And then, all of a sudden, he jumped into action, and he started telling people to do things. He was meeting with the CDC. Now, many have said that this was because his approval ratings were in free fall. And as the narcissist in chief, that must have hurt. But I wonder, could there have been another factor? That the call to action actually came when the second nurse was diagnosed with Ebola, the second nurse in Dallas. It was when she got sick, all of a sudden, things started happening. And nobody has mentioned this, but that nurse was black, or is black. Think about it. Now, of course, you might accuse me of injecting race into the discussion. I'll freely say I do, but the regime does nothing else all the time. So tell me, is my idea that far-fetched? And like I said, if you think I'm right or wrong, chat room, if you're listening live, or send me an email, stefan@patriotcomelately.us, because I'd like to hear what you think about that. Secondly, so there's a second thing around Ebola that I want to talk about. These are the excuses that King Barry and his lackeys have been using for either not stopping flights, not instituting quarantine regulations, and I think those are despicable and unpatriotic as well. It was said that with regard to the flights, it was because it would make it difficult to get aid workers into the stricken region. One of the reasons. Another one was that it would negatively impact the economies of these poor African countries. Well, Let's say, first of all. So we are willing to risk a major disaster in the US because of the economies of countries in Africa. I feel very sorry for them, but I think that the primary objective of the president and of the administration, the executive branch, should be to protect Americans. That should be their first objective. And if in doing that they can also help other countries, that's fine. But if they have to choose between the two, I think it's very obvious which one they should choose. Yes, they should choose keeping the Americans safe. But also, when they were talking about the planes, if they needed to get aid workers in there, they could have used military aircraft. I think I've said this in an earlier show before now, that we could use Air Force or Army aircraft to do that. And I've said before, while I'm very much against spending taxpayer money, that's one area that I wouldn't really object to if the administration said, yes, we want to help Africa, and it helps us by helping eradicate this awful disease. We'll use our aircraft, our taxpayer money to fly people in there to help it out. That's one area that I wouldn't object. It has to be done properly. We have to make sure that all the necessary protocols are followed. But I wouldn't mind that, so that would have been one way to resolve that issue as well. Of course, you notice the regime had no problem whatsoever blocking flights into Israel at the drop of a hat. And this was a situation that basically had no danger to America. Yeah, maybe to Americans supposedly who were flying into Israel at the time. But it was no direct danger to America, whereas Ebola is a direct danger to America. We've now had 3, 4, 5 people. We've had a couple of other scares of people who we thought might have it. This is a very deadly disease. Yes, it is in some ways easy to control, but it's also very easy for it to become uncontrollable. And as it mutates, if it were ever to mutate to airborne, boy, we would be in deep doo-doo. So the other thing that the regime has been very anti and very been creating all sorts of problems about is the institution of quarantine. Lots of people have been calling for quarantine regulations, and the regime has basically said, no, we're not going to do that. When New York and New Jersey said, well, if you're not going to do it, we will, and instituted it, apparently they got leaned on very heavily by the federal government to basically withdraw those regulations. They ended up softening them, especially New York, of course, Cuomo, Democrat, regressive, nutcase. But, it's so strange why they would be against a regulation like this that introduces safety for Americans. And not only New Jersey and New York, but some other states. I think Florida instituted a slightly more limited form, more of a voluntary one. And isolation at home, not in a hospital. But okay. Now, the weak argument that the regime was giving was that it would discourage aid workers to volunteer to go over and help in Africa, because they'd have to come back home and then spend 3 weeks in quarantine. Let me get this straight. These aid workers are prepared to risk their lives to help others, but balk at spending 3 weeks in the equivalent of a luxury hotel in order to safeguard their fellow Americans. Well, then I say those aid workers are unpatriotic as this incompetent and untrustworthy regime. But let's think about it. Why is the regime so insistent on not having good regulations, good protocols to prevent Ebola getting over here? Is this another crisis which can be used to some advantage? As Rahm Emanuel said, right? Any crisis can be used to advantage. Now, I may be venturing into tinfoil hat area here, but I really put nothing past this untrustworthy bunch of thugs in the White House. Okay, folks, time for our next commercial break. I will be back in just a moment. Here we go.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
Every day, millions of Americans grow more concerned about the future of our great nation. The truth is, over the last century, a small but powerful collectivist movement known as progressivism has debased our politics, our culture, and our currency. We're just a small step from falling into 1,000 years of darkness, as Ronald Reagan warned. Friend, this is Pat Boone with an important free offer on a hot new book called The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Lowell Ponte. This new book explains how we, the people, can end this fatal detour into big government and get back on the path of faith and freedom charted by our founders. Call now for a free copy of the hot new book called The Great Withdrawal.
Call now for your free copy. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. That's 800-978-3901.
Boy, man, I had a rough night's sleep. Boy, I got a letter from the IRS yesterday, and I just couldn't sleep. Man, I'm dying here. Somebody help me.
IRS problems affect more than just your finances. If you're ready to take back control of your life and you owe more than $10,000, you need to call the Tax Doctor. Their expert staff can immediately protect you from the IRS and state collectors and get you the best possible tax settlement guaranteed. The IRS has recently released new programs geared in helping struggling taxpayers, where you may qualify to settle your tax debt and wipe out up to 85% or more of what you currently owe. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, call the Tax Doctor right now. See if you qualify to pay less. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. Again, 800-917-8546.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And thanks for sticking with me, folks. This is the second half of the show. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, British by birth, American by choice. And remember, folks, it is 1 week until the election. And here's someone else who has a message for you about this, which kind of pertains to this upcoming election.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
And of course, that is Ronnie Reagan. And this week was the 50th anniversary of his famous speech that he gave for Barry Goldwater, but in some ways launched his own political career. It was such a stirring, conservative-oriented speech. The Time for Choice, or The Time for Choosing is the official title. And, I wish we had someone like him available in 2016. And if you believe it can happen, maybe the right person will come up. So let's do that. Okay, folks. And my before the break, managed to finish my commentary. So now is time for some other news items. And the first one is a question: Is Valerie Jarrett actually running the country? And there is evidence that was effectively hidden by this gangster regime for years, but it's starting to come out, and it's, as someone put it, like a bunch of cockroaches in a dirty kitchen. Judicial Watch recently put out a report saying that Obama had used executive privilege to shield Eric Holder's emails to his family that obviously held incriminating evidence that Holder had lied to Congress about when he first found out about Operation Fast and Furious. Now, Judicial Watch has been attempting to obtain that information through the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA, but the Department of Injustice refused. Judicial Watch sued, and a federal judge actually ordered the DOJ to provide the information. In one part of all that was released, and it's not even everything that Judicial Watch asked for, but there is information that Valerie Jarrett, Obama's Rasputin, was the individual tapped to head the cover-up effort that followed. So in other words, the White House, here's the smoking gun, the White House is implicated in actually running the cover-up on Fast and Furious. Think about it, folks. Nixon basically got impeached or stepped down, resigned before he was impeached for less than this. Nobody died in Watergate. In Fast and Furious, thousands have died in Mexico. Americans have died. We've even had these guns now found in crimes in America. So cover up. We should make King Barry resign. Of course, the narcissist in chief would never do that. But anyway, it shows that Jarrett was intimately involved in coordinating the effort to manage the damage after it was revealed that Eric Holder had lied to Congress. The emails haven't been provided. However, there is a description of the content. One correspondence between Holder and Jarrett, directly, Holder and Jarrett, smoking gun, folks, is titled Outlining and Discussing Preferred Course of Action for Future Responses in Light of Recent Development in Congressional Investigation. Folks, wake up. I mean, what more do we need? What proof do we need? Eric Holder lied. The White House is involved. We should kick all of them out and not wait until 2016. We should be doing that now. And by the way, that last phrase was translated in the report that I saw. In other words, how do we cover this stuff up? Yeah, which is a very good translation of what that phrase says. But the phrase itself is obvious enough. Now, Fast and Furious was only the start of many scandals and illegal behavior that has come to light during King Barry's reign. And what is interesting is that Jarrett was intimately involved from the beginning in dealing with the consequences of the regime's illegal actions. In other words, she has always been used, and most likely still is used, as a fixer. And so that's another reason why we need to get rid of him, her, Holder, the lot of them. Next topic. The left is always so insistent. Well, actually, no. You know what? I'm going to skip that. I'm going to save that for next week. It says about the left always being insistent that voter fraud does not exist. Well, guess what, folks? We've got proof, and I've given other examples in prior shows, but we've got even more proof and coming up to this election. Remember what I said last week. If we get any surprise voting results, that's not just because of the ground game of the Democrats. I have to give them their due. It's probably good, but there's more afoot than that. And I'm going to talk about that next week as we look at the results coming in, but also this one. So instead of that, let's go on to a different topic. And you may have seen in the news, I just want to give some comments on this, that a request or a draft solicitation for bids was issued by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is under DHS, or ICE, what do they call it? Immigration and, whatever, asking potential vendors to be able to create ID cards for permanent residency cards, otherwise known as green cards, although they are actually pink. How do I know? Because I held one for a number of years. As well as the employment authorization documentation cards. These are the cards that are being used to implement King Barry's deferred action for childhood arrivals. In other words, stealth amnesty, or work permit type situation. Now, the request for the bids, the RFP, does not specify how many of each type of card have to be issued. But what is frightening is the fact that potential vendors must be capable of handling a surge scenario of 9 million ID cards in 1 year to support possible future immigration reform initiative requirements. So is this basically pointing the way to the executive amnesty that King Barry is threatening to do after the midterms? No way he'd do it before the midterms, because he'd know that might give the GOP the 66 majority in the Senate that they'd so love to have. But there's going to be a lot of crap happening after the midterms, because then King Barry's going to be a lame duck. He's going to have basically December and part of November to do stuff before the Senate is taken over by the GOP. Remember, I'm thinking positive. And he's going to push through what he can with Dingy Harry. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not the GOP will have the cojones to stand up, and the House can do it. The House can cut off the funding. And then King Barry will rant and rave and say how the Republicans are responsible for shutting down government. We'll have to see. But anyway, so the Citizenship and Immigration Services is getting ready. They said they're having new cards issued, and they said that they actually want to have, normally they're expecting about 4 million a year. Now, even 4 million combined green cards and EADs, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals work permit, is a significant number, even without the surge. For example, since the DACA has been enacted unilaterally, executive order by the little dictator, about 600,000 people have been approved under the program. Statistics show that USCIS have actually processed 800, let's say almost 900,000 in 2014 as of June. So now they want to have green cards and EADs together at an average level of 4 million, but with a surge of 9 million. That is unbelievably high in terms of that number, but even the 4 million, because that's much higher. That is much higher than on a normal year, even with the green cards. Now, the other thing about the DACA cards, the EADs, or Employment Authorization Documentation, they cost significantly less in fees to acquire, about $450 compared to more than $1,000. And I believe that when I got mine, with all the lawyers' fees associated with that, it's probably closer to 5 or 6, maybe even more 1,000, maybe even more than that the company that was sponsoring me paid for. In many states, the EADs give aliens rights to social services. I thought illegals weren't supposed to get that. And the ability to obtain driver's licenses. And then we see as well that having driver's licenses, they then immediately go out and register to vote. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. Now, right now in the queue, if we look at legal people in the country, there are about 4.5 million waiting for approval for green cards. And they have the sponsorship from relatives or companies. So 4 million in a year, but there's no way they're going to get through that 4.5 million in 1 year. So why are they all of a sudden upping this number to such a large number? And of course, think about it as well. All these 4.5 million people who are here in the queue legally are now going to get pushed back because, of course, we've also got to process these DACA people and the USCIS folks. There's only a certain number of them. They can't do everything. So those 4.5 million are going to have to wait even longer than they thought they would have to, just in order to to be legal. Folks, this is just totally broken. We need to have a proper solution and not just executive action. We need to have this looked at properly. Okay, folks, time for the last commercial break. And then we'll be into the last segment of the show again. Wow, time flies when you're having fun.
Reporting from the eye of the storm. This is the worst weather we've seen in quite some time, folks. And I don't see any end in sight. People have been calling in from across the state complaining their basements are flooding. One guy said he now has an indoor swimming pool in his basement. I told him he needs the waterproofing innovations from Basement Systems. If you want a dry basement or crawl space that will weather any kind of storm, you need the patented solutions from Basement Systems. You've seen them on home makeover shows throughout the country. With a lifetime warranty, every solution is custom designed for your basement. Call now for a free estimate, and you'll never have to worry about storms like these again. I'm predicting this storm front is heading your way, so call Basement Systems and relax.
Call 800-205-8665 for your free in-home inspection, or visit basementradiooffer.com. That's 800-205-8665, or visit basementradiooffer.com.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call. But I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-750-5371. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-750-5371. That's 877-750-5371.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. Okay, folks, thanks for sticking with me. That was the final break. We're in the last segment of the show, and just want to remind you that if you do want to contact me, Stefan@patrickcomelately.us is the email address. Please send me your questions, comments about the show. Love to hear from my listeners. And please do tell your friends. Remember, the website to listen to the show live is radio.patrickcomelately.us. And we go out at 11 p.m. Eastern, which is 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific on a Tuesday. You can also listen to the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us, or you can listen to them at redstatetalkradio.com. And the schedule is changing, so you may want to check to see when this show is actually sent out, but do tell your friends. I want to play some music at the end of the show here, and this is really just to remind folks about the elections coming up, why we do this, and why we have to make sure that we actually vote correctly on Tuesday. So think about this song when you go into the polling booths.
Through the
Yes, folks, the land of the free, the home of the brave. Let's remember that. Remember that when you go into the polling booth, and please take the right decision. Vote for the right people. And as I said before, I don't normally tell you who to vote for. But as far as the Senate races go, please vote for the GOP person, even if you don't like them, even if you think they're as corrupt as the Democrats. Right now, I'd rather have one corrupt Republican that gives us the power in the Senate than to have those regressives and especially corrupt people like Dingy Harry in control. So next week we'll be looking at the results. I'm sure everybody will have been looking at them before you come to listening to the show, if you listen live, or if you listen to the recordings. Of course, it'll all be over, but I'd like to give my analysis, and I will be looking as well at some of the results, and also giving you some information about the attempts to influence those results on illegal and bad ways. So, okay, folks, it's time to say TTFN. The music is starting. Ta-ta for now. Please join me next week and keep your fingers crossed. We have good things to talk about. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, long live liberty.